Yeah. There's also reference to the content moderation of Meta. Sorry, I'm struggling with my connections here. Of Meta and all the other social media platforms in Europe in the national security strategy. There's a lot of focus on the suppression of opposition parties, meaning, right-wing opposition parties, Alternative for Deutschland, for example, Gert Wilders' party, the parties that Trump sees as ideological kinfolk. And I think at the same time, there is a lack of, or a dearth of, ideological language on China, the kind you would see in a more democratic-aligned administration. It's just purely framed in terms of cold, hard economic interest and economic hegemony, which in some ways is refreshing. It's the ideological zeal of the transatlantic class that has led the U.S. into war with Russia through Ukraine and has led to the militarization of Taiwan. But I think there's a good segue there with the discussion of the DCMA Act of the EU and the blockbuster report that you just published, Kit, or you just co-authored on the British censorship regime. Before we get into that, though, I saw some people in the chat who brought up something I wanted to quickly discuss, which is the UK getting rid of jury trials. And there are a number of Palestine Action activists from this anti-war group that has never harmed a single person but has been proscribed as terrorist, who are now on a hunger strike. So can you fill us in on the British state's push to eliminate jury trials and what's taking place with Palestine Action and its proscription as a terrorist organization?
Yeah, sure. Because I mean, number one, I mean, it has been extensively written about that. Like, one of the first things that fascist dictators do when they take power is get rid of juries. So that's something to bear in mind. But I mean, the British state prescribed Palestine Action this summer as a terrorist group, despite the fact that they never harmed a human being, and they mainly just smashed up and threw red paint at the headquarters of companies that are providing Israel with weapons with which they conduct a 21st century Holocaust in Gaza. But I mean, we've seen from reporting by Declassified UK, we might get into them more later, that the even British security services, based on leaked documents, they had no legal case whatsoever for banning Palestine Action, and were questioning whether this was, a sensible thing to do. MI6, anonymous MI6 officials have issued statements saying, we disagree with the ban. And the British government has done what most governments do when they do the wrong thing, which is just double down on their idiotic decision. The Home Office attempted to spread this completely bullshit narrative that they're funded by Iran, which a lot of media, mainstream media outlets ran with, despite the fact there's zero evidence whatsoever that this total volunteer organization receives any funding of any significance from any source, let alone a quote unquote hostile foreign power. But yeah, I mean, we at the Grayzone reported a few months ago, I think, on how the Palestine Action has been of interest to the British state since its creation 5 or 6 years ago. And the Home Office and other government departments have been coordinating directly with Elbit, which is the weapons manufacturer that is primarily targeted by Palestine Action. But also they've been coordinating with the Israeli embassy on ways to tackle the quote unquote threat of Palestine action. The group was so successful that they were on the verge of shutting down Elbit Systems. Entire factories run by this company were shuttered. Their suppliers and companies that provided them office space rescinded this due to concerted activism by Palestine Action. So the British state was basically forced into a corner and made this, took this nuclear option of prescribing them as a terrorist group, which has been widely condemned, including by the UN. For whatever that's worth, which is not necessarily very much. But again, as we reported, there's this very weird kind of quirk with the prosecutions of Palestine Action activists or actionists, which is they're not being tried under terrorism laws, but terrorism legislation will be considered in their sentencing. And they are, the many Palestine Action activists who are in prison currently, they are treated as if they're terrorists, which means they have virtually no access to the outside world. They're in, solitary confinement, which is, just completely insane. But this is the reality of modern Britain. And so, Reading jury trial, frequently Palestine Action managed to walk free, having, carried out acts of vandalism against Elbit factories or production centers, because they argued, well, we have actually under international law an obligation to prevent, under the genocide, the UN Genocide Convention, we have a legal obligation to prevent this equipment being made. And juries, more often than not, were extremely sympathetic to those arguments. So getting rid of that kind of line of defense probably means that, very sadly and depressingly, these people are going to be, have rubber stamp sentences and be sent to prison for a very long time.
So de-democratizing what's left of democracy in the UK on behalf of apartheid Israel is basically what's taking place, preventing citizens from being able to make their case for a jury of their peers because their peers are so sympathetic to what they've been doing, and because the direct action has been so effective in neutralizing Israeli production centers in the UK.